to when the next Sundance Film Festival is going on this week. And it was, I think, the buzziest title there. Everyone was just kind of like, "Oh, you got to see this. This movie is unreal." Slated for a summer release, which I always thought was weird, but I saw it this summer at AMC, and with my A list at Disney Springs. Let's go. And had a borderline existential crisis walking out of it. Was like in tears, shaking, potentially hyperventilated.
Oh, no.
And it got to the point where, and this has not happened before the movie, I literally asked for the days off the next week of work and flew home for a week because of this movie. So yeah, to tell you that I love this movie is maybe like, yeah, no, this is a really close movie to me. I adore everything about it. I think it's perfect. I'm really excited to discuss everything about it because, like, if you're one of these people that is like me and you're constantly thinking about your own life and your own mortality, this movie's going to hit a specific brand for you that it's a lot. It's a lot. So I'll pass it off to George first, and then Jared. George, what are your initial thoughts going in the past life?
I have a feeling I know why you passed this off to me first. I was the first of us three to actually watch the movie.
Yeah.
I saw this at the Belcourt Theater in Nashville.
Let's go. We love the Belcourt. Just a shout out. Sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you.
No. They really need one because they're incredible and lovely, and their theater is really nice, and they show indies and old movies, and they show movies on 35 bill. So, and support art house independent movie theaters. They have a whole special on Criterion Channel that you can check out. Yeah, I kind of went and I decided to see it kind of on a whim because like I was gonna be going there and just like while I'm here I may as well like make time to see it. I saw it at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I came out of it and like it was just one of those movies where I'm like most movies I see are like I have to sit down and I have to think about my rating for a little bit because if a lot of times if I just like go on Letterboxd and I rate a movie like so I might be like it's a 3.5 or something like that like an hour later. So I usually like have to sit down and like think like okay, do I want to give this 4 stars? Do I want to give this 3.5 stars? Or whatever.
Well, when the first thing I was saying before my internet started being fast, I was talking about Letterboxd, how this was like one of the only movies that kind of knew going out of it that start movie. I really like could not similar to Brett in a way where it's like I felt like this was like very close to my life. And I think a lot of those laws though to be fair because I mean, I can't imagine that there isn't anyone who thinks like, would I have been happier if I had gone down this pathway in my life? Would I have been less happy? Would I have, this and the other thing? Or people who cling on to something from the past that maybe they would be clinging on to, maybe it's holding them back, and and things of that nature, and like, you know, they don't have closure on anything. They haven't resolved their future, so which I think is like more specific here. I'll get into it a little bit later, but I feel like that's specifically with the character in the movie. But I feel like this is a feeling that everybody knows and has thought about in their life. So yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's a very yeah. I'm just saying it's a very like universal feeling that the movie communicates very like extremely well.
yeah, in a certain regard, it is, it is technically a quote unquote romance movie because it is kind of like this, well, what it could have been type of thing, and in a similar vein of probably the last 9 minutes of La La Land.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of at the same time, it has so much to do with destiny, and and if you went down this path, how your life would have formed and been completely different from when you are here. And I think especially for creative people, when they go down avenues where they're having to travel a lot and they're having to figure out their own path and their own way, there is this idea of like, well, if I was to have just settled down, especially maybe somewhere I was familiar with, like, would my life look different than it does now? And this movie tackles that question in a really profound way. And it does remind me a bit of what Linklater was doing with Before Sunrise and Before Sunset, with really long, extended, discussions and talks. And, then those characters, spend 12 years apart and they kind of have already that inkling. And these people have spent, 24 years apart? It's kind of crazy to think about how much life can live in that span of time. And, so yeah, it is, and I think the reason like the movie is resonating and doing so well with a lot of audiences and doing the award campaign, it's like what George said, it is a very universal film. I think anyone can really resonate with that theme of the what if, and the film illustrates that wonderfully. It takes its time, it's patient, it's meditative. Even I think something we'll get into is the husband character is so well done, because and they even kind of bring it up in the movie itself that like in a different movie he would have been like the evil white American husband who stole her away from like what her life could have been in Korea, and he's not that. He's this genuine, well-meaning, well-loving guy that happened to be there for her, and it's that wonderful moment where T.O., the guy, the actor who plays that character, tells her, it's actually kind of painful that I don't hate your husband, like that's such a poignant line in the entire film. I didn't mean to go off again. I could talk about this movie forever, but Jared, what are your initial thoughts on Past Lives?
I remember even in 2022. I'm big A24 fan. I know this was a movie coming up. I was checking like the Letterboxd page one day, and people who had seen it like at test screenings, who signed the days and all that. Though there's some people who were like, yeah, this is a big deal, you guys. Keep a lookout. This is amazing. 5 stars. I'm like, okay. And I read what the stars about. I was like, okay, keep an eye on it. It's coming to Sundance. Okay, let's keep an eye on it. And it blows up. I think if I'm being really honest with myself, though, I kind of walked out feeling overhyped about it, because when you're competing, it's just an unfortunate thing in the entertainment business when you're competing with people constantly giving it 5 stars and saying it's great and it's a romance, which I love. It's hard. I think maybe more so for me, learn to I need to shut off all of that, but I don't know, hard for me, it's a weakness, whatever. But the more I thought about it, I appreciate for what it was and what I thought in my head for it to be. It's just such a lovely story. I'm very glad it's doing well in the awards because I was one of the people you can look in the past. I don't think this is getting in anywhere. It came on the summer. It would be very hard to get that hype back, but then that hype came back. Thank goodness, it's appearing everywhere. It's
doing a
gonna
cover
probably
right now.
get it.
Yeah.
So, just
Well,
love a lot about it. I have a really good. I'm going to keep it for maybe later in the podcast if we ever talk specifically about Celine's song, but there's something very interesting I found about her and her direction.
So Jared, no. I understand the idea of like going into this movie and feeling like it was slightly over exaggerated because you come out of Sundance and some people are like, this is like the biggest, most monumental movie in movie history, and it's like this moment where it's like, well, no movie can kind of live up to those highly expectations if you're not everything everywhere all at once. So like,
Yeah.
like you know what I mean? So
especially for a film that's so peaceful and like takes its time. This is, I think, going in, what I thought going in was like, this is going to be kind of like an epic romance, like from their young in Korea to like they find each other overseas. Maybe they confess their love. I think I'm going into like that. It really has a lot more of a small world type boat ride kind of feel. It's just going through this life, also kind of dealing with but it's weird because it's so like slow, not in like a bad way, but it's also the story's using time as like basically time is an illusion, and we're just like going through 24 years of this life in 2 hours, and these two people, what technically I guess 3, and what they mean to each other, and just still beautiful work.
yeah,
it's in my 10 of the year still, but
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, yeah. So
there's
okay.
a specific line in the movie. You guys with me?
Yep.
There's a line. Nora's mother says this to Haesung's mother in the first section of the movie. They're talking about why Nora and her family are moving to Tristan Land, aka Canada. And hi Tristan, I know you're listening to this. She says something. I believe the exact quote is, "When you leave something behind, you gain something too." Which I feel like this specific line is the whole like arc of the movie, at least when it comes to Haesung. Because like, I mean, it's very clear, like he spends the entire movie like clinging on to this crush he's had on. I mean, you can basically say he's kind of a simp. He's kind of clung on to this. He's never really resolved his feelings. He's never found closure. But it's kind of this whole like integral to his development. The movie kind of implies that he's had some other relationships in the background that haven't really worked out. The movie doesn't explicitly say why he failed. My guess though would be it's because like he hasn't resolved his feelings with Nora. I think that kind of leads to his decision to go visit her in New York. And now that's where he ultimately finds her. And he sees like how her life has changed since then, since they last spoke on the Skype call, and like how like seeing how she changed as a person since she's now living in new country, new culture. I mean, you know, they see she speaks English. She doesn't. She's lost her her accent, and just you know, she's, of course, she's married to a, you know, to a white dude, and like, he kind of like is witnessing this, right? This whole new life that she has made for herself. And it's really kind of, I guess it's kind of only when that happens, when that finally, like, when he finally sees it for himself, that he finds closure in it. I think I have a bit of, like, I might have a bit more of a cynical view on it, because, like, I think it's kind of like he realizes that it was just never meant to be. And so it's like he has to kind of find comfort in the fact that she is happy, and that she has her own life, and that maybe that's all that matters. And maybe, you know, one day with their, you know, in another life, they can, like, their, you know, their yin yang, as it's said in the film, and it's a real concept, you know, of course, but maybe they have enough yin yang to where in another life they can be something.
Yeah.
And, you know, ultimately, when he leaves at the end of the film, specifically leaving her behind, he finally gains that closure, and he's solved his feelings, and it's ultimately, that whole line in the movie is like that's like the most important line of dialogue in the entire film.
Mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Again, I think I mentioned this in the Holdovers episode, but it's David Lynch's line about the eye of the duck, like the part or the scene in the movie that explains the whole movie. And I think that's a really good estimation of what the eye of the duck of that movie is. I agree with that. And I agree with you with the idea of closure. Another line that really sticks out to me in Past Lives is the one where, like, she talked about, like, again, the characters' names, I'm sorry, kind of just like come and go for me for this movie, which is bad. So that's my bad. But it's why can't I think of the actress either? I have a cat on my lap.
Greta Lee, and I
Greta
think
Lee, yes.
Nora.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, but it's whenever, like, Nora's talking about, like, well, what if I didn't leave? What if I had stayed there? And then he replies, like, but you're you, and you had to leave. You know, like, if you hadn't have left, you wouldn't have been yourself. I think that's a really important moment in the film as well, because I think that was the specific line that kind of broke me in the theater. Because, like, when moving 900 miles away from home, you know, there's stuff that I left behind at home. Potential relationships, potential, you know, this stuff that I had to leave behind in order to pursue this thing. But I knew that I had to. And there is that sort of, like, well, what if I had foundationally just, like, stayed in Missouri forever and figured out a life there, you know? But then at the same time, I'm like, I probably would have never been happy, because I would have always thought about this, what I'm doing right now, and I would have always contemplated that, and that wasn't what I was supposed to do overall, you know. And it's a similar kind of feeling that I have right now, which is like an idea of, like, I still want to pursue my dream of filmmaking, and I want to pursue my dream of writing and directing and producing. And I'm in a spot right now where that's not really a great option for. And I'm starting to look for places to move to. And it's like, when I move, there'll be people that I leave behind, and there'll be things I leave behind, and even opportunities that I'll leave behind. But it's this idea of, like, they're sustaining my brain there, where I'm like, I have to go pursue this thing. And if I don't pursue this thing, I don't think I'll ever be 100% happy with where I am or the opportunities I have. And so I think an alternative future or universe where Nora did stay behind, she wouldn't have been entirely herself, because she would have always been like, well, I never got this publishing career that I wanted because I'd stayed behind in Korea in an area where I couldn't get stuff made, and again, it's very similar to the last 10 minutes of La La Land. It's this idea of like these two artists having to separate in order to pursue each other's dreams, but like they weren't meant to be together in that regard because their paths were so different. And you can just think about it all the time, just over and over again, like, well, who knows if I would have been happier if I didn't pursue this thing or do this big thing. But at the end of the day, how can you change from that? How, like, you can't really learn or stay in the details of that forever, or else it'll drive you mad. So yeah, that's kind of my estimation of Past Lives. I think it's also an idea. I mean, I think the conclusion of the film is that we can go every single day thinking about, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we did, whatever. But at the end of the day, we didn't. And this is like, we kind of lie in our own bed and we got to figure out what that is. And that was the way it was supposed to be, and I think the film comes to the conclusion of being at peace with that idea and that notion.
Because we're kind of on the topic of the ending, I wanted to share. I love and watch during award season. There's a lot of like Hollywood Reporter roundtables and just general like roundtables of actors, producers, writers. This one specifically was a writers roundtable with Celine Song and like Andrew Haig and Cord Jefferson for American Fiction. And they were talking, and she shared like how being a writer and director like helped her and all that. And she was telling a story of they were filming the ending scene, and that her DP was like, "Okay, how you want to film this?" And she's like, she knew, of course, that she's a writer, how she pictured it, and when she explained it, it was just so brilliant. And she's like, "We're gonna film it like a timeline. We're gonna film it on this street, and if you can picture in your head, it's framed of Hey Song on the left and Nora's on the right. They say their goodbyes. Hey Song's going to get into his car and go into the past. He's going to go into the left. Nora's going to walk to her right as she's walking to her future with her husband, her future into this kind of unknown life. But Hey Song will always be in the past," which I was like, oh my gosh, brilliance.
That's amazing. That is
yeah. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't wait for the podcast just to share that.
Yeah.
And then, like, my favorite scene, I would say, is also the ending, but I also want to say I really was a fan of the beginning. I love how it opened up on these three people at the bar, and we don't see, but we hear people being like, "Who do you think they are? There are these three people. Do you think they're like a throuple? Do you think, like, they're about to dump the white guy or something like that?" Like, we just focus on these two random people talking. And then as they're talking, the camera slowly zooms up on Nora's face, and then we kind of cut to the real beginning of her story. And it was just such like a mood setter, because I believe also in these interviews, the whole story came from this idea of like, you see these three people at the bar and kind of just questioning like, who are they? What is their story? And it's such like a unique situation where they're two Korean people and this white guy doing together, and so I think it's just, I'm not 100% sure, but I just was really much a fan of that opening. It kind of really hooks the audience in, and then we start like, here is that story, here is this story of this love lost and love found, maybe potentially, and love put together. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's beautiful and profound. I really love that. And again, it's what makes the difference between someone who really knows what they're doing behind the camera and someone who doesn't. I think, for instance, of last year with a movie like After Sun, which I know the three of us love, is like, that's such a quiet and meditative movie as well. But there's so many like choices in that film from a directing standpoint where you're like, oh, that hits so hard because of the way that was framed, stuff that's like not even on the page originally. And that's like what the director can give something. And Celine Song has definitely proven with her debut that she knows exactly what she's doing. And I'm really excited to see what she does next, to be honest. Like, I think she has a great future, especially after this. But
I am so excited for her next film. Like the rumor is it's going to be kind of like a broadcast news type movie but it's like about a woman who sets up like as a matchmaker in New York City, and then a love triangle forms. So I'm very, very
It's
excited.
also apparently got our boy Jared.
I heard him
Jeremy
and
Allen White.
Jodie Comer. So if y'all seen The Last Duel, for all the movie fans, like you know what heat she's gonna bring.
Jeremy Allen White's in everything. Like that dude just
all of the Bear fans and the Shameless fans will be coming to see this movie for Jeremy Allen White.
But what about the Iron Claw fans? Let's go.
How about the fingernail fans?
That's like two people in the entire world.
Yeah, the two people.
That poor movie.
Yeah.
I just to go on a completely different sub-tangent. One of the funniest things ever was seeing Fingernails at TIFF. I was walking out, I ran to Tristan and Eden, and Tristan was like, "Wasn't that like a great movie? That was so good." And I was like, "Man, I'm not gonna be real. I really didn't like it that much. I thought it was kind of boring." He was like, "Oh, really?" Like I was like really moved. Like I'm like feeling things. And then an hour later, we were at a bar, and Tristan's like, "No, you were right. It wasn't great."
I know you were gonna talk about that.
All right, girl. Like, it was a completely drastic change of opinion. Oh man, good times. Anyways, Jeremy Allen White, we respect and we love you. One thing I love about Past Lives is the score as well. Which how it didn't get shortlisted is an absolute tragedy.
Got a shortlist John Williams for the 5,000th time, even though the score was nothing.
I mean, it's a good score, but like he's doing his regular Indiana Jones motif. Like that's a great score, and it's still a great score.
Yeah,
but I
it's
mean,
like there's like nothing memorable outside of that.
Yeah, because I know some people complain about him like getting nominated for like The Force Awakens. So I'm like, there's new motifs in that. I get it.
Yeah,
like,
The Force Awakens has like new music, like Rey's theme, for example.
Yeah.
Like Rise of Skywalker was like a name check nomination. Fablemans, I know you two are going to disagree with this. I don't think it's really that great of a score.
No, it's a great score.
But
it's a great score. Go back and listen to the score.
Okay, buddy. I don't think it really needed to be there, but to be in the Oscar 5, but whatever.
But like this score, from the band Grizzly Bear, Daniel Rosen's band, which has been a band that like I have enjoyed, but like I have never really deep dived into them. But like after this movie, I was like, oh, they could be the next Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross duo that makes scores for people that are like really emotional and profound. Like this could be the next part of their career. I want to hear more of what they do, because like even the way that it, like, I love the opening, and like one of my favorite shots of the movie is like them playing as kids on that little playground, and like the bells kind of going off, and then that music scoring, like swelling as like the parents are talking about their kiddos and how they're going to live their lives together, and you're already know it's not true, and I'm already crying, and it's 15 minutes. And goodness, it's just it's so much.
It's my favorite score of the year still.
Really?
Yes. I mean, I like a lot of those like kind of moody scores. Like I love the score for Her and Minari.
Yeah.
As well. It kind of reminds me of those.
I mean, like the Poor Thing score for me is.
Oh, that's second. That's
Poor
like
Things,
that score is insane.
Like I listen to the Poor Thing score sometimes in the car, and I'll be like, oh, my goosebumps have goosebumps right now, and I'm driving to the gas station. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, what's so interesting? The composer of that, Jurgen Fendrix, he's from the same music scene as Black Country New Road and Black Midi.
Yeah, I know, and like he needs to get more work. Give my man some more work, please. Goodness gracious. But yeah, no. Again, I think Past Lives, you could put it in the same category as a Her or an Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind or a Lost in Translation.
Yeah.
Very much Lost in Translation, actually. I think that would probably be the best thing, which is like these brief like connections and moments that we make with people, and how like maybe they don't last forever, but how they kind of form us into who we are and what we think about the world. You know, even Marriage Story in that regard. It's this idea of like the journey is potentially worth the heartbreak it might bring to figure out who we are as individuals. And
yeah. And Eternal Sunshine gets name dropped in the movie.
I know. I love that so much because that's such an amazing movie, and like
in the theater,
and we even see him watching it, which is really cool.
When they played the clip in the movie, I was like, "Yeah, my boy Michael Gondry," like to myself. Let's go,
Charlie Kaufman, baby.
Yeah, nothing will ever beat whenever they name dropped Paddington 2 and The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, and I stood up and applauded in the theater.
Yeah, that was good.
But it's a close second is the Eternal Sunshine drop for sure. Even the way like the film is very 21st century of the way that it uses technology. You know, there's a lot of like Skype calling and Zoom chats and calls, and some movies that would feel kind of like, oh, this is going to be dated and it's going to feel weird and I don't love this, but like it feels so much of its time in a way to where I feel like it'll be timeless, if that makes sense, almost in a way that Back to the Future does. Like it's so submitted in the 80s that you're like, oh, it's cool, it's submitted in the 80s. Like this uses the 21st century technology and slang in a really interesting way that makes it feel like it's a part of our era. And I feel similarly to like 8th grade, like Bo Burnham's 8th grade, where I'll always be cemented as that time period. But it doesn't feel like it's just like pandering to like, oh, hashtag blessed or whatever, you know, like
Gucci.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that movie's doing that, but it has, again, if we go all the way back to what we were discussing about Joe Coy, there's intentionality to it. And
exactly.
Presentation to it that is interesting. It's not just cloying to an audience.
Coying.
Ooh, we should make the we're coying for coy. We're coying for coy.
God, good Lord.
Goodness gracious. Jared, do you have a particular scene, particular moment in Past Lives that stood out to you?
I would say, like I was saying, the beginning is one of my favorites. I love just everyone's performances of the main three. I do wish John McGarrow and I forgot the actor's name, but the actor who plays Hey Song were getting some more love.
Hell yeah.
But I mean, if we're at least getting noms and it's on the field working on everything, then I'm fine with that.
A tragedy of this awards season is going to be John Morago missing. Majaro.
It's because people like kind of forgot about him.
Because whenever the movie came out, we're all like, he might win, you know. But,
I don't know if I ever believe that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean he's fantastic.
And then I love the fact that I'm pretty sure based on what I know in Celine Song's life, he's based on her real life husband, and her real life husband is a white guy.
The writer of Challengers.
And it's the writer of Challengers. And so that is like one of my most anticipated movie of next year. So if he has the same prowess and work and talent as his wife, I really hope Challengers is something as well.
Yeah, I feel like it will be. That's going to be probably one of the most highly discussed movies for the rest of the year, to be honest with you. Like in a way that Saltburn was. You guys notice that like randos are talking about Saltburn now?
No, it's everywhere. It's at my work.
It
exploded. It really exploded.
I was talking to one of my coordinators at work, and because on the whiteboard in Muppets, we always write like a question of the day. And I'll come up with weird ones like what Muppet would commit tax fraud or whatever, right? But the one that someone wrote was like, what's your favorite bagel? And so people were writing down bagel flavors, and I just wrote, I put everything, all the life sorrow in my life, and I put it in a bagel, and I made that like a check mark. And a few people understood the reference, But Amy, my coordinator, I didn't mean to name drop her, sorry. My coordinator was like, oh, what's that from? So I told her, and I was like, have you seen that movie? And she was like, oh, no, but have you seen Saltburn? And I was like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. It blew up over the holidays. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't, it's weird.
Because it became a challenge to show like your parents' reactions to certain scenes. And I'm like, you guys must have a lot of people must have really cool parents, because I would not feel comfortable showing my parents the bathtub scene.
Me.
Like,
No, oh my god.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things surrounding that film is when they did the Critics' Choice nominations and it showed up in Best Picture, and I remember the Oscar experts' reaction to that being like, "Wait, they did Saltburn over Anatomy of a Fall and Zone of Interest in May, December, and Spider-Verse? What is happening?"
There was a Variety article that was like, okay, Oscar voting's done. Here are some things we found with some voters, and one point was like Saltburn is kind of on the rise. I'm like, if this gets like a Best Picture nom, I think riots are happening. It's gonna be divisive as hell.
I would be annoyed, to be honest.
So,
I'm not crazy about that movie.
We will talk about all that more in depth on George's podcast, right?
Woo.
But what I'll say, I don't think it's impossible.
I think it's definitely 15. Like, 11 through 15.
It kind of screams a Nightmare Alley to me.
That's what, yeah.
Because think about it in this regard. Who's talking about Maestro right now?
I know. Maestro kind of quiet on the Western Front.
Look, I mean, again, we'll get into an Oscar Mafia. I don't think it'll get in picture. I really don't. We've seen that happen before. We've seen like One Night in Miami, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom or whatever, that just like gets some text and some acting and then just completely mess picture because like the passion for those movies are not there. And I would argue both of those movies had more passion than what Maestro has right now. Like people are not about Maestro.
I would love to see Origin get in. It's kind of people are saying it's next to Leslie because people are holding screenings and whatnot. But hey, this actually looks like a good movie though to support it,
Yeah. Oh, like they're pushing actually AMC. I can't go to it because I have to work after this. But AMC tonight's having a Q&A screening with Ava DuVernay, like stream, and they're like playing up the film tonight. Apparently, that's happening a lot of places. So I'm just wondering if that happens.
If Origin somehow actually got Best Picture, we have to predict a Francis Fisher slot. We just have to start treating it like Diane Warren, where it's like, okay, what's Francis Fisher pushing because that's automatically in.
That Variety article I was saying about Oscar voters saying that it's on the rise Origin, but it might just get a Best Picture, like just a Best Picture nom. And it would be, if that happens, that'd be the first movie to do it since 1941 or something like that, which would be crazy.
It kind of checks out that it would happen in a Ballot of 10 nominees. I
would love to see it happen. I would love to, because it looks like an important movie to.
I mean, we'll talk about it tomorrow.
I think if we were working more on a preferential ballot, that it would not make it. But on a Ballot of 10, I don't think it's impossible. I really don't. And that's the thing. I'm talking about like the Ballot of 10. Is Saltburn possible because it just has enough buzz right now? They've been talking about a lot in the award shows. They want to make jokes about it. I don't know. That's the thing.
I agree with the possibility.
I mean, to be fair, if the Golden Globes were what they were before their whole shakeup, I would have been like, yeah, they're gonna like have Saltburn win and then have Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish perform songs or whatever. But like, I know
that's what the Critics' Choice thought that they were gonna do. They thought they were gonna do Saltburn, so that's why they nominated it.
Yeah,
because they're not critics. They're not critics. They're pundits.
Yeah, but like, we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
Yeah.
Is there any final thoughts on Past Lives?
Want to shout out the cinematography.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wish it gotten more attention. I obviously understand why I didn't, but that's a really beautiful looking movie, especially on second viewing. The lighting is really beautiful, and it's shot on film, so that's a plus.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. I love the sequence where she first meets her husband and like they're outside in that yard and it's like the sun setting, and the lights
Yeah.
it's stunning. And again,
Yeah.
movies like that sometimes don't get the recognition they need because of how smaller they are, but it's like that's cool though, because it's like I could do that. You know what I mean? I just have to think about it. Is some of these movies like it's like we couldn't do that yet because obviously we don't have the time, budget, camera. But like I find shots like that inspiring.
I'm always a fan. There's like a million different movies that do this all the time, but like that kind of romanticize New York, so to say, like, and just all the places that they go to, like. I think one of the more famous shots from this movie is going to be the two of them in front of that carousel in that park, sitting down. Just so beautiful. And you can even they're sitting down and finally like talking about like I believe that's the scene where they finally just start talking about like why did it take so long to meet up and all that, and the carousel is like a representation of time going past. I don't know, that could just be me, but. Hey, if she's thinking about that timeline shot at the end, who else that Celine Song's thinking of? Oh, so good. I think.
And again, shot on film, we got to emphasize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think what I want to say is there's always this talk, this kind of buzz in your ear about cinemas dying of IPs and just kind of the blah of it all. This is something that was original. That has this indie feel. That's just this amazing small story. And other stories this year, I think of like American Fiction, All of Us Strangers. There are these All of Us Strangers, before anyone says, is adapted by a book, but even then it feels it's taking that book and taking a new approach. But these non-IP stories, and I feel like there's a lot more that could go on and go off of this past year. Poor Things, in a way, Barbie, that is to me screaming that there are artists out there that don't think it's dead. I think it's just a lot because, of course, they're big studios making these IPs, so they have the advertising. It's just a life tale of let's go and seek out more of these movies. Support. I know American Fiction and All of Us Strangers are two movies that are beginning and in the middle of their national rollout. So if in the coming weekend you see them pop up in your theater, I would say go support them. I mean, if you haven't seen Past Lives, I think it's on Showtime and Paramount Plus, or you can buy it or rent it. Just a call to support these movies so we can say like, hey, we want these to be made. There's a great YouTuber, Chris Stuckman. He's someone who has his first feature coming up, but he's always been in his videos saying you need to say with your money, like, yes, I want to see more Past Lives. I want to see more of these movies because that's how studios listen. That's just as someone who's just finished his first movie and he knows kind of the ins and outs. It's like, yeah, just go support them. Like it's very hard to DVD and Blu-rays aren't the second home releases that they were in like the 2000s anymore. It's hard, and it's still hard. There's a producers roundtable where they talked about how hard it is to figure out if Past Lives was a theatrical experience movie or if they should find a streamer to do it. But of course, A24 got and backed it up. But the producer for Past Lives, as Darren was just talking about, that's the world we live in now.
Yeah, no, we live like it's interesting because we've heard Scorsese discuss this and several other filmmakers where there used to be a more theatrical window for movies like Past Lives. You could have a movie like Ordinary People come out in 1980 and be a blockbuster and then win Best Picture. And essentially, it's because that was your only shot to see the movie, right? Like, it was like, oh, there's this buzz about movie. It's not going to come to home video for 7 months. There's no streaming. And also, hey, buying a VHS back then was really expensive. And so it's like, here's your shot. You want to go see this movie? Go to the theater. And that window is just closing. But something that I think is actually kind of somewhat promising about the future of cinema on a large scale is, I mean, I hate to say it, especially someone who works for the company, Disney's failure last year. Because essentially they were releasing the same, outside of a few instances, obviously, they were releasing very safe, approachable projects that they thought, oh, these were solid deals. And then they didn't end up working out because people were like, well, I can see this on Disney Plus in a little bit. And also, like, it doesn't look great to me. I would much rather spend my money on a Barbie or an Oppenheimer because that's a big screen theatrical experience that I haven't seen before. And I don't know when it was an experience. And I think if cinemas and theaters really want to go back to becoming this successful route, they have to make movies that are experiences. And if they make movies that are big screen experiences, then that can help fund movies that are independently small-minded that can also have a theatrical release. You know, I think it's a healthy market when the top performing movies of the year are movies like Top Gun Maverick and Avatar: The Way of Water and Barbie and Oppenheimer and these like movies that are large in scale but people want to go see because they want to see them on a big screen. And I think those movies can completely share and coincide with movies like Past Lives and movies like Poor Things and these smaller, more independently minded films. Because if we continue to support the theatrical window, these things will come to theaters. And so it's this idea of like, I guess if I was at Disney right now, I'd have to be like, let's try to make the next thing that is going to spark cultural discussion and not just be something people passively see on a Saturday night, because that's not going to be the guaranteed $1 billion that it was 10 years ago, because we dug ourselves in that hole with streaming. You know, I think, like, I genuinely, honestly think that if Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny came out 10 years ago, it would be $1 billion movie. It can be the same quality. It could be the same quality movie. And it would still make it, because people are like, oh, it's Indiana Jones. It's in theaters. Cool. But now they're like, well, isn't that just going to come to streaming 3 weeks later? And it's also getting really mid reviews. Let's just wait.
It's crazy that apparently Color Purple's already on VOD, the new one, Beyond Demand. That movie was just came out 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. Like,
people, yeah, crazy world we live in.
It's tough.
And then, yeah, Disney's next movie in theaters, guys, is Inside Out 2. They have some 20th century. They have Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes and 20th century horror movie called The First Omen. That's going to come out before then. But that's in terms of theatrical. They just have that. And then they're releasing the 3 Pixar movies. But Soul was just released this weekend and did not do well. So, but it's the Disney Plus problem. I don't know how you fix it, but it's the Disney Plus problem.
I mean, they have lost millions of dollars because of that streaming platform. It's a big, I think it'll be like that thing that like Defunct Man makes a 3-hour essay on like maybe 5 years in the future, because like there's so much to dissect with that. But essentially, if you boil it down to its simplest fruit, you'd go to a Best Buy once upon a time and you would see every single Disney film that was out of the vault, which they would only release for about 6 to 8 months. And it was a $20 Blu-ray. You could buy it and you'd own it physically. And that product was worth $20. And now it is the entire streaming library of Disney on one platform for $7 a month. Maybe it's a little bit more now. Maybe it's 10. I don't know. But if you take 10 and divide it by, hundreds, it's like all these things are worth a cent, maybe even less than a cent now to the Disney profit. So if you take all the physical media sales and divide that up by how much it would be worth just being on Disney, I don't even think it takes much math to figure out how much money they're losing. Like, it's crazy. It is crazy. I don't even know why I didn't even think that through in the first place. I get that physical media is dwindling away, but like, the idea of like, same thing with like what Criterion Channel does. They release movies sometimes. They'll release them for like 3 months on the platform and be like, all right, they're going away after this day. The Disney Plus didn't do that. That's the route that they should have gone. And I know people kind of get frustrated with that, but it makes the experience feel a little more intimate than just being like, well, I have access to all these things, so I don't have to worry about it.
And then I even see it for myself sometimes. I think when I know it's on there for a long time, like, I'll get to that later. I'll get to that. I have time to get to that versus yeah.
It's crazy.
Well,
anyways, George, do we have do you guys have final thoughts on past lives? Any comments, questions, concerns,
Comments, questions, concerns. I don't know. I don't think this video will be out by tomorrow, but I hope tomorrow the jury does the right thing and saves Teo. I need that man to get at least something. You talked before about how it's sad that they're leaving out John Majaro, but I think you should have been much more of a presence. Yeah,
absolutely agree. How about you, Jared? Any final thoughts on past lives?
Just a beautiful movie that I feel like I would just love to see more of, and I think we will following like the strikes and whatnot. At least I'm just very optimistic about that. Great performances. It's grown. It's how I say this. I love seeing a movie in theaters that's like an adult movie, but it's not adult because there's like explicit violence and sex and whatnot. It's just a grown up because of its themes and because it's not talking down to anyone. It's just asking life's hard questions and just leaving us with those answers.
It's very My Dinner with Andre core, film.
And it's just and I wrote, like, when I saw The Bike Riders, AFI Fest, I'm like, oh, it was great that, like, we get an adult drama by a major studio like 20th Century Fox. And then that didn't happen. Now it's going to Focus Features, which is made for those movies. But still, go check it out. My only question would be, why was John Magaro's book that he writes called Boner? But... I just would like to know why that was the choice. I don't know if her husband in real life wrote a book called that, or just Celine Song, if you're listening, we would love an answer.
I need to know. We need to know what that choice was. Well, friends, that was this episode of Workshopping Humanity. We made it. We made it through this journey. Woo!
We connected for over 24 years, just like Hey Song and Nora, except it was like 24 years.
So if you guys want to see more from the Workshopping Humanity, just universe, I guess it's a universe, I don't know. Yeah, sure. Go to workshoppinghumanity.com for articles, podcasts, all that, those fun things. You can follow me at Skipper_Scott on pretty much every social media platform. Got my own little film thing going on over there in development that is exciting. You guys can plug yourselves and your little outlets as well.
J Movie Lover on Instagram and Letterboxd to check out like my takes and whatnot and all the movies I'm excited for.
Yeah.
George A. Ehret, Letterboxd, George Alex Ehret, Insta, Oscars Mafia. Yeah.
Heck yeah. Next week. So, interestingly enough, there's just like this weird era of this podcast where we were like doing episodes, but I don't think they ever released on Spotify. They're just on YouTube. And in that episode, we did do a Barbenheimer episode, essentially. But look, we're going to revisit it because there's a lot to say about Barbenheimer, and there is a lot to say about its complete and utter dominance and sweep on awards season. If we're doing an awards season recap within the next few episodes, it would make no sense to leave it out because it is the awards season movies and it's the narrative of the entire year. So, and now we have some perspective. I mean, it's been 5-6 months since that whole thing happened, and it's still very culturally relevant. So we'll get into all of it. We might talk even more about Joe Coy. Who knows? But that's going to be next week's
Good
episode.
Lord.
And so we'll see you there. Peace out, friends.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Wally, I promise this is my last one. Great film.